Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, monimuli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the oh-so-beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so very, very happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their principal, their librarians, and please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Maria Dismondy. She is the founder and publisher of Cardinal Rule Press. Before we invite Maria into the studio, we want to invite all the authors who are listening to the show to go to readingwithyourkids.com. There's a button up at the top of the page. It says authors, click here. If you would click there, you will discover how you can be a guest here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Being a guest is fun, it's easy, it doesn't cost a thing, and it gives you the chance in a long-form conversation to tell thousands and thousands of people all over the world all about your great children's book. You can also discover how you can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. It goes up on our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame. You have a fantastic review that is published on our blog and also shared with book bloggers throughout the country. And you can also find out about our monthly promotion program. We'll celebrate your book through commercials here in the podcast, messages to our 120,000 plus social media followers, and we're really excited. We just added this perk. We will consult with you and let you know how you can up your social media game. Give you a consultation that can really help improve your presence on social media, help get the word out about your book to more and more people. I mean, it's a fantastic program that's very effective and very affordable. Learn all about that and more at readingwithyourkids.com. Join us right now from the great state of Michigan. Our guest is here today to talk to us about the importance of literacy. Please welcome to the show the founder of Cardinal Rule Press, Maria Dismondy. Hey, Maria, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
I'm delighted to have you on. First, thanks so much for all the work that Cardinal Rule Press does to help promote literacy. I'm on your mailing list. We've had a number of your authors here on the podcast. So I'm aware of a lot of the things that you folks are doing, but instead of me trying to remember them all, tell us a little bit about Cardinal Rule Press and about your really important focus on literacy and in communities.
Absolutely. Let's dive in. First of all, on Cardinal Rule Press, we produce books that are modern day diversity. So they're for children of today. We want children to be able to see themselves in the books. We've been around for, almost a decade, a little over a decade, somewhere around there. And for us, community is really important. And so is the access to literacy. And we know that not all children have access to good books, to reading materials. And so that is part of our mission, is to get books into the hands of children who may not have them. And so how do we do that? We do it through many different ways. I've become kind of like the book lady in my community, my physical community. So I have a lot of people who donate their books to me because they know I'm going to get them into children's hands. But aside from being the book lady, we also are a publishing company. And here's something not many people know about publishing. If a bookstore returns your book because it may have a little itty bitty bend on one of the pages, that book is not allowed to be sold. Now, let me tell you what, that book is typically brand new except for a little teeny weeny bend in the corner. So as a publisher, you have a choice. Choice A, you can pulp the books, which I believe is a big no-no. Or choice B, you can request the books to be returned to your physical location. So that's what we do, is we get our returns and we then donate all of those returns as well. And those are like new books. So we have built an online community, right? So I'm physically here in Michigan, but we've created an online community to support.
That's wonderful. And how, I guess if I'm a bookstore, I understand if I get a book and, we get a shipment of 10 books and 2 of them have a page that's kind of bent or something like that. Yeah, all right, we want to get that out. But how crazy is it that you're not allowed to sell that book, even at a discount? And I'm guessing pulping means throwing it in and recycling it.
Correct. And I think, bigger publishers probably choose to pulp because let's say you have 5,000 books. Well, if you don't pulp, you have to pay for the shipping to get those 5,000 books back. Then you have to do the work to distribute those books to children and families. So I get it. It's a lot of extra money. It's a lot of extra work, but we're smaller and we find that, it's important for us to do that.
And I'm guessing that a kid that is living in a literacy desert that doesn't have access to books, that has to get on 2 or 3 buses to go to their local public library, if there is a public library, they probably wouldn't mind if they got a book that had a page that was bent in the corner.
They would not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Because that brand new pristine book that you could buy at a bookstore, it's going to have a couple of bends in the pages pretty soon. I would say if the book is any good, it's going to have bends and tears and the pages are going to be dirty within a week because the kids are going to be reading that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, that term book deserts, for those of you listening, that's something to really focus on because there are communities that are desert-like as far as literacy goes, where the children don't have access to books, but they also don't have the support for literacy in the home either. So, and we can't always blame the parents. I feel very blessed because I have an educational background. I taught for 10 years. I was in the classroom. I was a reading specialist. So I get what it takes to teach a child to read. Not all families have that. So another aspect of Cardinal Rule Press is we are trying to educate families in simple ways on how they can get their children reading. Because like you and I know, reading is access to so much. I think it's access to everything. It's access to the world. You can read a book about China here living in Michigan and you can have access to that culture and to the experience of being in a different, part of the world.
Yeah. Well, as LeVar Burton said here on the podcast a few years back, reading is emancipating. Being able to read is freeing and gives you the freedom to go out there and get the information you need to make up your own mind so you don't have to rely on others to tell you how to think.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's spot on.
Yeah. Hey, here's something, and typically I leave this to the end of the interview, but it's so important, and it's one of those things that really bothers me sometimes about doing the podcast. We celebrate on the podcast the fact that when you read with your kids, when they're 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, when you read to those kids every day, 20 minutes a day, by the time they get to school, they will have heard over 800,000 to 1 million more words to their peers who weren't read to. And that's a tremendous advantage for our kids to go in there and hear all these words. And I wanted that, and certainly my kids received that. But I'm concerned about their peers, the kids who aren't being read to, the kids who are showing up at school with that deficit. And that deficit doesn't go away really easily. It's not like by first grade they've all heard those other words. It's something my kids, your kids built on. They showed up hearing 1 million more words, and by second or third grade, they're probably going to they still will have heard 1 million more words than their peers who weren't read to. And what can we do short of telling parents to stop reading with their kids until they get to school, and so everybody has at the same starting ground? What can we do to help support those families who, through a number of reasons, don't or aren't able to read with their kids?
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a good point. We're going to circle back to that. I do want to point out that by third grade, everything gets a lot more intense in school. So by third grade, you're expected to read to understand, right? So before then, the teacher usually would read the assignment to you and you would just give your answers. But by third grade, you're expected to read the assignment, comprehend what it means, and then move forward. So we see a lot of children struggling at third grade and on when they're in that situation, like you mentioned. So what can we do? Let's say I'm retired and I'm living in a neighborhood. Maybe I can mentor children in my neighborhood, and so offer my time, my talent, my treasures to, reading with those children. Maybe the parents work and their kiddos come home after school from the bus stop and they've got an hour by themselves. They're on tablets. Maybe you can offer, hey, I'll get your kids from the bus stop. They can come over and I can read with them. You can also offer to go into schools. So schools are always looking for volunteers. So you can have more of a schedule volunteering. You can go in once or twice a week, and teachers will have those children, kind of during reading time, they'll be working with a volunteer so they get more one-on-one attention. And then the third idea I have is to try to partner with an organization that helps to get books into the hands of children. So whether you're working at your local library, local libraries have those used book sales called Friends of the Library. So maybe you volunteer with that program. And once the sale is over, what do they do with the books? Maybe you can help get those books into some of those literacy deserts.
Yeah. And it's a great idea for retirees, but it's also a great idea if there are students out there. If you are a parent who has a kid that's in high school. I spent 3 years in high school and all my time in college volunteering in the Boston Public Schools, helping kids develop their reading skills. And a lot of times it was, to my mind at that point, it was like, oh, I'm just reading books to kids. But in reality, I now understand that spending time reading books with kids, helping them turn the pages, and I was showing them how to read, giving them the basic skills they need to read. So retirees.
Gosh, that's a great point. And, a lot of these kids have the time, right? The high schoolers have the time. They're getting out of school at like 2:00, 2:30. If you don't have a job, you want to volunteer, even if you do have a job. And, a lot of kids know that colleges want to see that you're giving back to your community as well.
Yeah. That volunteer experience for me helped me get into college and helped me get my first 2 or 3 or 4 jobs. It was huge. And so, yes, I absolutely encourage families. If you're listening, encourage your kids to get out there and volunteer. They can, and besides what you're doing for the community, it really feels good. And it will really help, especially if you have a kid out there that you think they don't really feel great about themselves, they're not winning any trophies and whatever. This is a great way to help them build their self-esteem.
Oh, that's key right there. You should be quoting yourself on this podcast.
There we go. I should. I talk too much. No one wants to hear me anymore. So tell us a little bit about Cardinal Rule Press. We've had some great authors come on. Tell us the latest books that you have out that we want to check out.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I'm just looking on my shelf here. We have a book that comes out next week. It's called It'll Be Irie, which in Jamaican patois, which is the, dialect or the common language in Jamaica, it means it'll be all right. And it's a story about a boy named Raymond who moved from Queens, Jamaica to Queens, New York. And he wants to be the most American around. And so the book is really fun, not only for the kids, but for the parents, because it's set in the 80s. So you can see he's listening to cassette tapes to learn English. And so there's a lot of little nods to the 80s that I think parents will enjoy. And it's just really all about staying true to yourself, because in the end, Raymond learned that he doesn't have to try to be American. He is who he is, and he can be valued and respected for that. So that is by Don Swaby, and that comes out on July 1st. We have another book called Buddy the Bucket Filler. So we have this whole bucket filler series by Carol McLeod, and that book will be coming out on August 1st. Bucket filling is all about this whole philosophy that we walk around with this imaginary bucket. And when we do things that are kind for others, like volunteering, it fills their bucket with good thoughts and good feelings. And if you're unkind and maybe you are, name calling or something like that, that is going to be dipping into people's buckets and it takes away their good thoughts and good feelings. So it really gives children this metaphor that they can hold on to and that they can visualize on how they can live daily with happiness by just doing kind things for others. So that book is called Buddy the Bucket Filler, and that will be out on August 1st.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Hey, I have to go back. That first book that you talked about I read, all right, internally. I know that was such a phrase I loved. I was a big reggae fan, still am. But you were talking about the character listening to cassette tapes. Anything in the book about the kid needing to rewind the cassette tape with a pencil?
No, but you know what? We should have. Oh, or if it gets stuck in the cassette player and you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Yeah. So it's fun. There's a boom box in there. There's ripped up jeans. There's a lot of neon on the clothing. So there's a couple nods to the 80s in there.
Cool. And at least, I don't know about you, Maria, but back in the 80s when I wore ripped up jeans, it's because I couldn't afford anything else. It's not like I was paying extra like they do nowadays to have the jeans ripped for you.
Isn't that funny? I know. So we're excited about that book. And, all of our books have a little something in the end. We call it back matter. And so in that book, there is a recipe for Jamaican Christmas cake, which Don, the author, used to eat when he was younger. And in Buddy the Bucket Filler, it has a short guide for families on how to teach this whole concept and use it as a parent in their own home.
Maria, how did you go from teaching to publishing? That's not a straight line. I get the connection with books, but teaching to running a business, that's a huge leap. And how did you make that? First off, what inspired you to want to make that?
That's a great question. And it's a big leap with a lot of mistakes along the way. I was in the classroom and I had a very diverse population of students, and I was disappointed not being able to find my own students in books. So I had Indian American students, and there was a lot of talking teddy bears in 2006, a lot of dancing dinosaurs, and there wasn't a lot of realistic fiction. So I thought, try to write a book, get it published. And I did. It's called Spaghetti in a Hot Dog Bun. You can see it there in simplified Chinese. So I resigned from teaching, and when we started growing our family and having children, I grew this writing career of mine. So I did write for some time, and then I said, you know what? I don't like all the attention on me. I want to be able to give this gift of getting these messages into the world to other people. And so I transitioned from author to publisher, which was a really good fit for me. I'm able to use my teaching background to educate the authors on what kind of marketing they need to do to really get their message into the world. So yeah, it definitely wasn't a straight line. And like I said, a lot of mistakes along the way. And I am so thankful to people like you, because how did I learn what to do? I listened to podcasts. I read books. I listened to audiobooks. I reached out to mentors. I joined masterminds. And I was able to learn it along the way, because having 3 kids at the house, I wasn't going back to school at that point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. You bring up a really good point of making mistakes and learning from our mistakes. I think that's something that that's really important for us to teach our kids. A lot of times, we throw up the A that the kid brings home from school onto the refrigerator, and we celebrate that the all A's. But if a kid comes home and they get a B or a D or a C, it's like, just try. We don't really encourage kids to understand that they can learn from their mistakes. That every success in the world begins with 1 or 2 or 1,000 mistakes.
So true. It is so true. And I think as parents, it starts with us. Parenting doesn't come with a manual, and I think my parents did a fantastic job. But I will say, when I became an adult, I thought that I wouldn't be making a lot of mistakes. I thought you just kind of knew what to do because I didn't see that in my parents. I didn't hear them talking about mistakes they made. I just thought they knew how to do everything and they did it well. And so I tried to talk about that with my own children, share my mistakes with them and talk about what I learned from the mistakes. And the best time I tell these stories where my kids will really listen to me is in the car, because everybody is strapped in and they have nowhere to go. So that's when I talk about these stories, and they're probably rolling their eyes back there, but I just keep going.
You know, I am weird because I loved driving my kids around. You know, it was anytime, I don't want to, I'll drive. And it's whether it's picking up everybody along the way, it was great because, like you said, you had a captive audience. So in terms of talking to your own kids, it was wonderful. And there's so many things to talk about. Obviously, you can talk about books that you're reading together, but if you happen to have the music on, you can talk about the lyrics you might be hearing in music, and those are great messages. Those aren't so great messages. And if you have an opportunity to drive your kids and their friends around, that's a gold mine. Could just shut your mouth and listen, and you just discover everything that's going on in school.
Oh, totally. I agree with you. That's why I have a minivan, because I can cart a lot of kids around. And I've actually had like the talk with our middle child in the car. It just, you know, one thing led to another. I was like, we're doing this right now. Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So I think there are so many opportunities to talk with our kids that we don't realize. And I know their parents are so busy. I mean, here you are running a publishing company. You're, as we say here in Boston, you're wicked busy. You're doing all sorts of things. The parents out there working 2 or 3 jobs, coming home and doing dinner. And now I have to get the kids to ballet or soccer or whatever. If you change your mindset and don't look at that as a chore, but look at that as an opportunity to grow closer to your kids, something a lot of families have to pay for with a therapist to help them grow closer. You get a chance to do this just by sitting in the car or the minivan, the most amazing vehicle in the world. It's just beautiful. It's also invisible, so no one notices. You don't get speeding tickets or anything.
And you know, let's capitalize on the fact that when you're in the car, there are days when I don't want to talk to the kids. I'm so tired. And here I am driving my kids to youth group, which is clear across town. So one of the things I do for those days where I just can't bring myself to speaking, well, one, we have a channel we listen to and we do love music, but sometimes we listen to audiobooks together too. And so we were talking about, you know, just vocabulary and the importance of vocabulary. You can do that in the car through audiobooks. When the kids were younger, we listened to Matilda. That was a lot of fun. A Wrinkle in Time. That was another one we listened to. But the language, and you're not talking. And how do you do it? We get them for free on an app on my phone. I don't get paid for this, but it's called Libby. And as long as you have a library card, you can get these audiobooks for free on your phone and then connect it with your car or just play it right there.
What a great resource for families. So it's the Libby app. If you have a public library card, you can use it for free and download all sorts of audiobooks. And you're right, it's a great way for your kids to discover new vocabulary. One of the things that I loved doing, and I still love doing it, is reading authors from different English-speaking countries, because they use a whole different vocabulary, and it's super, super fun.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and so that is a big recommendation of mine.
Yeah. So we've talked about the importance of reading and different ways that we can help kids who aren't being read to in our communities. What about, here's something, and I love the city of Boston. It's wonderful. My wife taught in Boston for 34 years. The schools are doing lots of work. They're helping. But one of the things I discovered is 40% of the schools in Boston don't have a school library. And I know that the same can be true about public schools throughout the country, not only in urban cities like Boston, but in rural places. What can we do to better support libraries, our public libraries, and also libraries in schools?
I think reaching out and seeing what they need, what kind of help, what kind of resource do they need? And for example, connecting them with someone like myself, a publisher. If a school does not have a library, you can rally communities, local communities outside of that area to help create that. I know a lot of teachers who have used GoFundMe to get their school, a classroom or a school library. I've met someone she was just a local citizen, and she helped by going to the garage sales in the summer. She helped build an entire library for an elementary school in her rural community. So I think really connecting with those, your public and school libraries, and just seeing what is it that they need. And then on the flip side, I have a girlfriend who was volunteering in the school library, and they were getting rid of books. And the librarian said, throw them in these garbage bags and put them in the dumpster. And my friend was like, oh my gosh. So she put them in the garbage bags and then brought them to me. And we got those books into good homes. So, I think just really partnering. I think it all comes down to community. And, you don't want to be a taker in life. Takers don't get far. You want to have like this equilibrium of, I'm going to give some and I'm going to receive some. And so, being in a community, what can you give to your community?
Yeah. Such great advice. Hey, a great piece of advice you could offer us right now is to tell us where we can go to find out more about Cardinal Rule Press.
Absolutely. Well, our website is just that, cardinalrulepress.com. And we are pretty active on Instagram. So if you wanted to connect with us there, we answer all of our direct messages. And I'm always open to hearing from you. So my email is maria@cardinalrulepress.com.
We've had a really great time speaking to the founder of Cardinal Rule Press, Maria Dismondy. Maria, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Darshana Kiani. We'll be celebrating I Am an American on the 4th of July. What an appropriate book. Don't miss it. It's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Maria Dismondy. Please be sure to check out all the great books coming from Cardinal Rule Press. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Madison Dieris, Monica Rivera Sosa, Soji Franklin, Ann O'Leary. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.